November 2nd, 1944, 3:47 p.m. High above Czechoslovakia, Lieutenant Bruce Carr's eyes lock onto the oil pressure gauge as it plummets to zero. Thick black smoke billows from his P-51 Mustang's engine cowling. The Merlin engine shrieks in protest, metal grinding violently against metal. Just half a minute earlier, he'd been spearheading a strafing attack on a German airfield. Now he's piloting what amounts to a flying coffin. Flak got him. A fragment from an 88mm shell tore through the engine bay and ruptured the oil line. Without lubrication, the Rolls-Royce Merlin has roughly 90 seconds before it seizes completely. Once that happens, the propeller transforms into a 400-pound deadweight, and his sleek P-51 becomes nothing more than a poorly designed glider. Carr's left with a single choice: abandon ship. He yanks back the canopy, inverts the dying Mustang, and launches himself into the frigid Czechoslovakian atmosphere at 8,000 feet. His parachute snaps open. Beneath him lies nothing but hostile territory in every direction. He's stranded 200 miles deep in German-controlled land, without a radio, armed only with a .45 caliber pistol, carrying 7 rounds, no rations, no water. It's November in Central Europe. Nighttime temperatures will drop well below freezing. The survival statistics are grim. American aviators downed over occupied territories have roughly a 23% probability of evading capture and making it back to Allied forces. The remaining 77% either spend the war's duration in Stalag Luft 3 or wind up in unmarked burial sites. Bruce Carr is about to defy every statistic ever compiled on shot-down pilots, because within 4 days, he won't merely escape. He'll commandeer one of Germany's most sophisticated fighter planes and pilot it back to safety. Bruce Ward Carr entered the world on January 28, 1924, in Union Springs, New York. His early years were unremarkable, save for one crucial detail. At age 15, in 1939, Bruce Carr mastered the art of flying. The timing was significant. September 1939 saw Germany's invasion of Poland, marking World War II's beginning. A teenage farm boy in upstate New York couldn't have predicted that within 5 years he'd be engaging Messerschmitts in aerial combat over Berlin. Yet something must have told him that aviation would soon become the most critical skill any young man could acquire. He didn't learn through military channels or formal institutions. A local crop-dusting pilot named Earl allowed the teenager to handle the controls of his biplane one summer day. Carr was instantly captivated. By his 16th birthday, he'd logged more flight hours than most Army Air Corps cadets. September 3, 1942. Carr joins the United States Army Air Forces. He's barely 18. During aviation cadet training, his instructor proves to be none other than Earl, the same man who'd introduced him to flying 3 years prior. Earl had enlisted as well. One glance at Carr's application, revealing 240 flight hours already recorded, prompts Earl to recommend him for accelerated training. August 1943 sees Carr commissioned as a flight officer. February 1944 finds him stationed in England, attached to the 381st Fighter Squadron, 363rd Fighter Group, 9th Air Force. His aircraft assignment, the P-51 Mustang. The P-51 represents the pinnacle of propeller-driven fighter design. The specifications tell the complete story. Maximum range, 1,650 miles with external fuel tanks, sufficient to shepherd bombers from England to Berlin and return. Maximum velocity, 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet altitude. Operational ceiling, 41,900 feet. Weaponry, 6.35 caliber, M2 Browning machine guns, carrying 1,880 rounds combined. enough destructive power to obliterate a German bomber in a 2-second firing burst. Prior to the P-51D's arrival, in significant numbers, American daylight bombing operations suffered devastating casualties. The 8th Air Force lost 60 bombers during a single Schweinfurt mission in October 1943. Without fighter protection, B-17 and B-24s were helpless against Luftwaffe's interceptors. The Mustang revolutionized air warfare. American fighters could now escort bombers throughout their entire mission profile. German aviators dubbed them the long-nosed bastards. The Luftwaffe started losing seasoned pilots faster than their training programs could produce replacements. Carr falls completely in love with the machine. The cockpit embraces him perfectly. Controls respond beautifully. Visibility is outstanding. The power feels intoxicating. He christens his aircraft Angel's Playmate. He has no inkling that within 8 months, he'll occupy a vastly different cockpit, one featuring German instrumentation and a swastika emblazoned on the tail section. March 8, 1944. Flight Officer Carr records his first combat engagement. He identifies a Messerschmitt Bf-109 over Germany and pursues. The enemy pilot attempts escape by diving toward ground level, skimming just above the forest canopy. Carr follows relentlessly. The pursuit spans 40 miles at velocities exceeding 400 miles per hour, both aircraft barely clearing the German woodlands. Carr opens fire. His rounds go wide. He fires a second burst. A single bullet grazes the 109's left wing. The German pilot makes a fatal error. He attempts to climb and bail out, but he's flying too low. His parachute fails to deploy properly. He impacts the earth at 60 miles per hour. The 109 smashes into a hillside. Carr returns to base, anticipating commendation. Instead, his commanding officer summons him to the office. "Carr, that was the most recklessly aggressive flying I've witnessed in my career. You nearly killed yourself pursuing that German through the trees. You're being reassigned." The kill isn't officially credited. Technically, Carr didn't destroy the aircraft. The pilot caused his own demise attempting to flee. It's the first sign that Bruce Carr operates differently from conventional pilots. Where others perceive recklessness, he identifies opportunity. Where others recognize boundaries, he sees mere suggestions. May 1944, Carr transfers to the 353rd Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group, known as the Pioneer Mustang Group, the first Army Air Forces unit in Europe to deploy P-51s in combat operations. These represent the war's elite Mustang aviators. Carr integrates seamlessly. June 17, 1944. 11 days following D-Day, Carr achieves his first official victory, sharing credit for an FW-190 destroyed over Normandy. 2 months later, he earns his second lieutenant bars. September 12, 1944. Carr's flight attacks a German airfield, eliminating several Junkers Ju-88 bombers positioned on the ground. During their return journey, they discover 30 FW-190s flying 2,000 feet beneath them. Carr acts without hesitation. He dives immediately. Over the next 3 minutes, he destroys 3 German fighters. When his wingman sustains damage, Carr escorts him completely back to Allied territory, sacrificing additional kills to safeguard his fellow pilot. The Silver Star, America's second highest combat valor decoration. October 29, 1944, Carr eliminates 2 Bf-10-9s over Germany. Confirmed total kills, 7.5. He's officially achieved ace status. 4 days later, fortune abandons him. November 2, 1944, Carr impacts the frozen Czechoslovakian terrain hard. Parachute landings are never gentle. His ankle twists violently upon contact, not fractured, but severely sprained. He collects the silk canopy and conceals it beneath fallen leaves. German search parties will come looking. They always do. He estimates maybe 20 minutes before patrols arrive. Carr knows the airfield he'd been attacking sits approximately 5 miles north. He knows German forces will anticipate movement south or west toward Allied positions. He understands his survival depends on choosing the unexpected course. He heads north, directly toward the enemy. The logic seems counterintuitive, but proves sound. Germans will search outward from his landing location, assuming he's fleeing. They won't anticipate movement closer to their installation. And if survival is the goal, he requires supplies, food, water, possibly weapons. The airfield possesses all three. Day 1. Carr navigates through the forest, avoiding roads, traveling exclusively at night. His flight suit offers minimal insulation. His ankle pulses with pain at every step. He hasn't consumed food in 18 hours. Day 2. He locates a stream and drinks. The water's cold enough to numb his entire throat. He spots a German patrol 200 yards distant and remains motionless in a drainage ditch for 2 hours until they pass. Day 3. Hunger becomes overwhelming. Carr's burning approximately 4,000 calories daily just maintaining body temperature. He's consumed exactly 0. His body starts breaking down muscle tissue for fuel. He reaches a decision. Tomorrow, he'll surrender. Luftwaffe treatment of captured pilots exceeds that of Wehrmacht or SS forces. Aviators maintain a professional code. They respect fellow flyers, regardless of allegiance. Carr knows pilots who've served time in Stalag Luft 3. They describe conditions as tedious but survivable. 3 daily meals, Red Cross packages, correspondence from home. It beats freezing to death in a Czechoslovakian forest. Day 4, late afternoon, Carr reaches the German airfield's perimeter. He's positioned within a tree line commanding views of the eastern boundary. Through the foliage, he observes hangars, fuel transport vehicles, aircraft, predominantly FW-190s, with several BF-109s mixed in. His plan: wait until morning, then approach the main gate with hands raised. But as darkness descends, Carr observes something crucial. A revetment sits 80 yards from his location. A Focke-Wulf FW-190 rests inside, partially masked by camouflage netting. 2 German mechanics are servicing the aircraft beneath portable lighting. Carr watches intently. The mechanics verify fuel levels. Tanks are full. They run up the engine, the distinctive roar of the BMW 801 radial breaking the silence. They cycle the propeller, check magnetos, execute what appears to be a comprehensive pre-flight inspection. Then they shut everything down, cover the cockpit, and return to the main hangars. The FW-190 stands ready for flight. Carr's mind starts calculating possibilities. He's never piloted a German aircraft. He doesn't comprehend German. He possesses no knowledge of control locations, engine start procedures, or landing gear operation. But he understands flight fundamentals. He's accumulated over 500 combat hours. Every aircraft features a throttle, a control stick, and rudder pedals. Physics remain constant regardless of language. And he's staring at a fully fueled fighter with no security. The surrender plan dissolves instantly. Carr waits until 3 a.m. The airfield lies quiet. Skeleton night watch crew. No activity near the revetment. He moves decisively. 80 yards of exposed ground, 0 cover. If anyone glances his direction, he's finished. Carr traverses the distance in 40 seconds, maintaining a low profile, his damaged ankle screaming with each step. The FW-190 appears larger than anticipated. Wingspan, 34 feet. Length, 29 feet. Empty weight, 7,000 pounds, nearly a ton heavier than the P-51. The cockpit perches high, shielded by 30mm armored glass. The BMW 801 engine dominates the forward fuselage, a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial, generating 1,700 horsepower. The Focke-Wulf FW-190 represents Germany's premier fighter. Initially deployed in 1941, it outperformed the Spitfire so decisively that British forces accelerated development of improved variants just to remain competitive. German pilots called it Würger, the butcher bird. Allied pilots simply called it Trouble. The aircraft Carr has just boarded is likely an A8 variant, the most prevalent model in late 1944. Standard armament configuration: two 13mm MG 131 machine guns mounted in the cowling, four 20mm MG 151 cannons positioned in the wings. Maximum velocity 408 miles per hour. Operational range 500 miles. A lethal weapon in experienced hands. Carr is decidedly not an experienced FW-190 pilot. He's never occupied one previously. He's never examined the interior. His entire knowledge of this aircraft derives from gun camera footage showing them exploding. Carr climbs onto the wing. The canopy's unlocked. He slides it rearward and drops into the seat. Initial observation: he can't decipher anything. Every label, gauge, and switch displays German text. The instrument panel presents a wall of indecipherable Gothic lettering. Second observation: the cockpit's more cramped than the P-51's. His knees press against the instrument panel. The control stick falls naturally to his right hand. Throttle positioned on the left, identical to American aircraft. Certain things transcend nationality. Carr has roughly 4 hours until sunrise. He utilizes every minute methodically. He traces electrical wiring. He identifies gauges by spatial positioning. Airspeed indicator typically appears upper left. Altimeter, top center. Engine instruments, clustered right side. He locates the fuel selector valve, magneto switches, propeller pitch control. The starter mechanism proves critical. In the P-51, it's electrical. In the FW-190, he's operating blind. On the cockpit's right side, he discovers a T-shaped handle marked with German text. The word vaguely resembles starter. He pulls experimentally. Nothing occurs. He pushes instead. A mechanical whining fills the cockpit. An inertia starter, winding up like clockwork. He allows it to spin for 10 seconds, then 20. Then he pulls the handle. The BMW 801 coughs, catches, explodes to life. The noise is absolutely deafening. 1,700 horsepower at idle still thunders. Every German within earshot will hear this. Carr has mere seconds remaining. No time to locate the runway. No time for brake checks, flap settings, or radio procedures. He rams the throttle forward. The FW-190 lurches violently. The tail section rises almost instantaneously. This aircraft's nose heavy, eager for flight. Through pre-dawn darkness, Carr aims between two hangar structures. Ground crew emerge, shouting, gesturing frantically. 60 miles per hour, 70. The hangars rush toward him at alarming speed. At 90 miles per hour, Carr hauls back on the stick. The FW-190 launches skyward, clearing the hangar rooftops by what seems like mere inches. He's airborne, in a stolen German fighter, 200 miles behind enemy lines. Now begins the truly difficult part. The FW-190's cockpit represents a nightmare of foreign systems. But Carr tackles problems sequentially. Landing gear, he discovers a lever on the left console, pulls it. A satisfying mechanical thunk. Gear retracts smoothly. The aircraft accelerates noticeably. Compass. He identifies the gyro compass. Orients west-southwest toward France, toward Allied territory. Altitude. He climbs to 500 feet, then reconsiders. At altitude, he's visible to German radar stations, enemy fighters, anti-aircraft batteries tracking all movement. He descends to treetop level, 50 feet above terrain. 280 miles per hour. The Czechoslovakian forest transforms into a green blur beneath his wings. This qualifies as insane flying. One error, one instant of distraction, and he'll cartwheel through the trees at 300 miles per hour. But at treetop altitude, he's invisible to radar. Too low for flak batteries. Too fast for ground forces to acquire. The fuel gauge indicates full tanks. The FW-190 carries approximately 500 miles range. France lies 200 miles west. He's got margin for mistakes. For 45 minutes, Carr flies westward. Sunrise occurs behind him. Terrain transitions from forest to agricultural land to the scarred battlefields of eastern France. He crosses the front lines. That's when his troubles genuinely begin. Allied anti-aircraft gunners perceive what they expect. A German FW-190 flying low altitude toward Allied positions. They engage immediately. 50 caliber tracers arc toward Carr from multiple directions. He's receiving fire from friendly forces. No radio to identify himself. No method to signal friendly status. The FW-190 still bears German markings. Black crosses on wings, swastika on tail. Carr executes his only option. Fly lower and faster. He drops to 20 feet, hedge-hopping across the landscape. Propeller wash kicks up dust clouds from roads below. French civilians dive for cover as he screams overhead. American soldiers fire rifles at him. Every weapon in France appears aimed at Bruce Carr. He later calculates that every .50 caliber machine gun in existence took shots during that 30-mile sprint to home base. The FW-190 absorbs hits. He hears impacts, feels shudders, but German engineering holds firm. The aircraft continues flying. Ahead, he recognizes the airfield. A 66 Bourg-Comté, France. Home base of the 354th Fighter Group. He aligns for approach. No time for proper pattern work. No time for radio communication. Anti-aircraft batteries are already tracking his position. That's when he discovers the final complication. Landing gear won't extend. Carr pulls the lever. Nothing happens. He pumps it repeatedly. Still nothing. He searches desperately for backup systems, emergency release mechanisms, anything. The FW-190's landing gear operates via hydraulic pressure. A selector valve directs pressure either toward retraction or extension. Carr doesn't know this crucial detail. He's unaware which lever controls the valve. He doesn't realize he's been pulling the incorrect handle for 5 minutes. Below, the 354th's anti-aircraft crews load their 40mm Bofors guns. A German fighter circling their installation. They're preparing to eliminate him. Carr makes his decision. Belly landing it is. He lines up with grass adjacent to the main runway, lowers flaps, that lever he's figured out at least, and cuts the throttle. The FW-190 descends rapidly. 100 feet, 50 feet, 20. The aircraft contacts grass at 90 miles per hour, slides 300 yards, throwing up a massive rooster tail of mud and debris before grinding to a halt. Carr survives. Within seconds, the FW-190 is completely surrounded. Military police, rifles raised, screaming at the pilot to exit the cockpit immediately. They're anticipating a German. They're expecting a prisoner of war. The canopy slides back. A mud-covered American in a shredded flight suit climbs onto the wing. "I'm Captain Carr of this goddamn squadron." Nobody believes him initially. He's been missing 4 days. He's presumed dead or captured. And he just belly-landed a German fighter on their airfield. MPs maintain rifles trained on him until a staff vehicle arrives. Colonel George Bickle, commanding officer of the 354 Fighter Group, exits and surveys the scene. The destroyed FW-190, the mud-covered pilot, the bewildered military police. "Carr," Bickle states flatly, Where in the hell have you been? And what have you been doing? The story spreads through Army Air Force's channels like wildfire. The pilot who stole a German plane. The only American in the European theater to depart in a P-51 and return in an FW-190. But Carr's war continues. 5 months later, April 2nd, 1945, near Schweinfurt, Germany. First Lieutenant Carr leads a flight of 4 P-51s on reconnaissance. They're cruising at 15,000 feet when Carr spots movement above. German fighters, more than he can immediately count. A massive formation stacked from 18,000 to 25,000 feet. Carr makes a rapid assessment. 60 aircraft minimum, possibly more. Bf-10-9s and FW-190S mixed formation. The largest concentration of German fighters he's encountered. He commands 4 P-51s. The German formation is enormous. Bf-109, G-10s, and FW-190D9s, the latest production variants. Relatively fresh pilots by 1945 standards. The Luftwaffe has hemorrhaged experienced aviators since early 1944, but 60 aircraft is still 60 aircraft. Standard tactical doctrine demands immediate withdrawal. 4 against 60 constitutes suicide. Germans possess altitude advantage, numerical superiority, and positional advantage. Every tactical manual ever written says, disengage and report. Alert bomber escort squadrons to incoming threats. Escape with your life. Bruce Carr has never particularly cared what manuals recommend. He keys his radio. Engaging. His wingmen don't question the order. They've flown with Carr previously. They understand his capabilities. When Carr announces engagement, he means it. The 4 Mustangs climb directly into the German formation. What follows represents one of World War II's most extraordinary air battles. The Germans don't anticipate an attack. They're flying loose defensive formation, conserving fuel, likely heading to intercept a bomber stream. 4 American fighters climbing directly into their midst defies all tactical logic. Carr exploits the confusion brilliantly. He slips into the formation's rear, positions behind a Bf-109, and fires. The German pilot never detects him. The 109 disintegrates. Carr transitions to another target, an FW-190. 3 seconds of .50 caliber fire. The Focke-Wulf inverts and plummets earthward. The German formation begins scattering. They can't determine American numbers. They can't identify firing positions. Carr moves through them like a predator through prey, selecting targets, firing, repositioning. 3rd kill, 4th kill, 5th kill. Within 3 minutes, First Lieutenant Bruce Carr destroys 5 German aircraft. His wingmen account for 10 additional kills. 4 American pilots, 15 German aircraft destroyed, 0 American casualties. When ammunition depletes, Carr leads his flight home. The surviving Germans, 45 of them, scatter across the German countryside. April 9th, 1945. Bruce Carr receives promotion to captain. The Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor, is awarded for his April 2nd actions. The citation reads, completely disregarding his personal safety and the enemy's overwhelming numerical superiority and tactical advantage of altitude, he led his element in a direct attack on the hostile force, personally destroying 5 enemy aircraft and damaging another. Carr becomes the final ace in a day in the European theater during World War II. No American pilot will duplicate this achievement before Germany's surrender. War's end finds him having flown 172 combat missions with 14 or 15 confirmed aerial victories, records vary, plus numerous ground kills. He's 21 years old. The war concludes, but Bruce Carr remains in uniform. He joins the Acrojets, America's first jet aerobatic demonstration team, flying F-80 Shooting Stars. Then Korea arrives, where he flies 57 combat missions in F-86 Sabres, with the 336th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. He commands the 336th from 1955 to 1956. Colonel's eagles on his shoulders. The farm kid from Union Springs, New York, now running an entire fighter squadron. Then Vietnam. Colonel Carr, now 44 years old, flies 286 combat missions in F-100 Super Sabres. Close air support, bombing operations, strafing missions. The identical work he performed 24 years earlier in a different war with different aircraft. 3 wars, 3 aircraft generations, 515 total combat missions. He retires in 1973. April 25, 1998, St. Cloud, Florida. Bruce Ward Carr succumbs to prostate cancer. He's 74 years old. They inter him at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 64, grave 6922. Among heroes from every American conflict since the Revolution, within sight of the tomb of the unknown soldier, across the river from the Lincoln Memorial. The headstone lists his rank: Colonel, United States Air Force. It catalogs his decorations: Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross with clusters, Air Medal with clusters, Purple Heart. It records his wars: World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It doesn't mention the Focke-Wulf. It doesn't mention 4 days in Czechoslovakian wilderness. It doesn't mention the belly landing without gear, MPs aiming rifles at his face, his commanding officer demanding, "Where the hell have you been?" Some stories don't fit on gravestones. There are 2 approaches to telling Bruce Carr's story. The first is legend. The downed pilot who commandeered a German fighter from an active enemy airfield, decoded the controls through trial and error, and flew 200 miles back to Allied territory while every gun in Europe targeted him. The second is documented history. The ace with 15 kills, Silver Star recipient, Distinguished Service Cross winner, the man who led 4 aircraft against 60 and emerged victorious. Both versions are factual. Both are extraordinary. But here's what truly matters. In November 1944, an American pilot found himself isolated, unarmed, and stranded 200 miles behind enemy lines. The logical choice was surrender. The safe choice was capitulation. Bruce Carr chose differently. He examined a German fighter aircraft covered in incomprehensible instruments and perceived not an obstacle, but an opportunity. He climbed into a cockpit he'd never seen, started an engine he'd never operated, and flew an aircraft he'd never touched. Not from recklessness, because he refused to accept that his options were limited to those appearing possible. 4 months later, confronted with 60 enemy fighters and 4 friendly aircraft, he performed the same calculation. The rational choice was retreat. The safe choice was survival. He chose attack. 15 German pilots never returned home. In 1997, 1 year before his death, Colonel Carr flew one final time. Kermit Week's Fantasy of Flight Museum in Florida had invited him for an air show. Carr, now 73 years old, arrived in a P-51D Mustang, his own aircraft maintained in flying condition.